Hey, welcome back, Mustangs. How are you? We are here at Lakeview in Laker Nation in Cottonwood, Minnesota, and I'm bringing to you another art lesson. And today we are going to work on specifically how to make a bubble stick figure. And specifically, we are looking to how to make Keith Haring figures. Now, for example, Keith Haring is a very famous artist, and attached in the link on the assignments page of D2L, I have a history of Keith Haring, and these are examples of what we're going to be doing. This is a process of making Keith Haring. Now, I've also done this where I've taken first graders and second graders, and we used a giant roll of paper, and we've rolled a sheet of paper out. Then we had the child lay in his best Keith Haring pose, and then the other kid drew around him with a marker. And once we had that drawn out, then they painted it. And so these giant, large Keith Haring tapestries would be the way I would describe it. This is another version that you can do. This is something that you could do with a contour line and concentric line. So this is an assignment that you could do. This is done in markers. But today, so what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to make those guys. Now, simply, I'm going to need a sheet of paper. So I have my sheet of paper here. Let me get it adjusted so it's right. All righty, and it's going to be a little dizzying right there, and I apologize. All right, so to essentially make myself a Keith Haring bubble letter, I just need a pencil. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over stick figure mechanics. So first part is I draw a line here. I always put a circle with little kids so they know that this is going to be a joint. So our shoulder is a joint, our elbow is a joint. Now, from here, this is where the neck comes out, and I could draw a head. And then I'm going to draw a line down that represents the chest and the torso. And it should go at least the same distance as there. Once it's there, I'm going to draw a little circle, and I'm going to draw two lines that come out. Now, you could make this thinner than the shoulders, so I'm going to go a circle there and a circle there. Now, that same distance that I had here, I could apply here and go down. So I'm going to go down. That's the same distance. That's the same distance. Now I could go down again that same distance, and there's a foot. There's a foot. So that's your knee. That's your hip. This would be your back. This would be a whole series of, you could make that. All right. Now my arm's going to come out, and it should be roughly the same length. The average person their hand goes to the middle of the thigh. So I'm going to bring this down to the middle of the thigh. I'm going to there's my thumb, and then halfway there, that's going to be So what we just learned a little bit was something called proportion. Proportion is a principle of design. It is, we've talked about this in the past. It is something beyond the art elements. Principle of design are, if you think of the language of art and you think of art elements as the prepositions, the verbs, the nouns, sentence structure now becomes the principles of design, how things are ordered. So once I have a shape like this, I'm going to modify that and change that. So I usually start by, anytime we want to show action, we draw the shoulders and the hips not in the same direction. So I'm going to go like this, my hips and shoulders, and I'm going to draw a curved line for my body. Now I'm going to bring a right leg up, and there's my foot. I could bring this one over here. There's my knee. And another thing that shows action is never having these at the same location. So by changing their locations, you've now created action. So now I could bring my arm here, put an elbow, go here, and then there's my thumb and my finger. Okay? I'm going to bring this one over. I'm going to go here. And then I'm going to bring this up, and I could put my head. All right. So I've just created a stick figure with action. This is a static stick figure. No action. This one is a dynamic Lots of action. So the one thing that you'll discover about Keith Haring is when you look at his work, he does a lot of things with dynamic. So I'm going to just take a marker and show you what to do. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to draw, woo, and I'm playing the game of operation. If I accidentally touch, I get electrocuted. Kids really like that, especially the young kids. Now I'm going to go around, and I just don't want to touch any of the parts. So I'm going to go around. Once I get to the shoulder, I'm going to go down to the hip. This is a hard concept for kids to get. They want to go back in all the way. So it's something that you can teach them and get them to understand. That's a real good concept there. All right, now I'm there. I'm at my hip, which is going to go up to my shoulder, and I go across. Now I can go around the head. I could even give it a nose if I wanted. And there's my Keith Haring stick figure. Now the next step is to actually take your eraser and you erase out those lines. Once you have those erased out, you have now created a Keith Haring original. Now, I could do the same thing around my static one. He would just be, it's just boring. There's no movement. It's not as exciting. Oh, it's like being at something that you don't really want to be at. It just, nobody moves. Everybody's just sitting there. So, yep. And I'm going to touch my line there. But now I could erase that out, and that would be my Keith Haring stick figure. The difference is static and dynamic. Now, when we make the painting, we are going to be doing a painting that is done on, you want to take a bigger sheet of paper. What I did is take a rectangular piece. Your paper should be in your drawing pad, should be that way. I'm going to fold it into thirds. So I'm going to do a tri-fold. So I'm going to fold a piece slightly like this. And I'm going to raise this up a little higher so you can see it a little better. So I'm going to take my piece of paper. I'm going to fold it past halfway. Then I'm going to bring this one over the top. Then I'm going to make sure they meet up at the top. And now I can fold those out. I now have three pretty close to equal. Again, I like to fold over again, so that I get a wrinkle-free fold, so that when I lay it out like this, it doesn't want to rise up. So what I'm going to do here is I could start in the middle. I could start on the end. I'm going to create a stick figure that's doing something exciting. I could do this. Woo! Again, remember, I like to add the little circles so the kids know where the parts are. I'm going to put the hands up in the air. There it is, and then I'm going to put the head there. Now I create that dynamic stick figure. This goes up to the shoulder. There it is. I'm doing this one in pencil, not in marker, because I am going to paint this one. Now, I'm going to make 3 of these. Woo! There's going to be another one that happens right over here. So now I could do the same thing. But this guy, and notice I didn't start in the same spot. You don't have to. That's up to you. Notice my lines aren't going in the same height and level. I could bring this foot down just a little lower so that it's lower than his. I'm going to bring this torso up. Woo! I'm going to bring that arm there. This one's going to cross over again. And then I do the same thing. There we go. This is a simple and easy way to create 3-dimensional full figures. Now, the fun part is you could do this in groups and have those big giant tapestries. You could have them create other things. But this is a simple way to make stick figures and make them into more three-dimensional forms. Now, what I'm going to do is each line is going to separate. There are three primaries. There's red, there's yellow, and there's blue. They have a complement, which is the color opposite them on the color wheel. And that color on the color wheel that's opposite them is a secondary color. Those secondary colors make, so if I have yellow, which is a primary, red, which is a primary, blue, which is a primary, and you can see it by those lines, exactly opposite and in the middle is green from red, yellow is violet, blue is orange, but they are secondary colors. So what I'm going to do, as I did here, is I'm going to use my Pelican, which is the brand I recommended. And when you get them out, if you got a single one, they're going to look like this. If you got a double one, it's going to look like this. They're a wonderful paint set. They are, in a sense, they are almost what we call tempera paints. They work wonderful. They're very opaque. They cover a lot of lines, so they help cover pencil line mistakes. But notice I did my red, and I did it with like older kids here, and I did green in the background. So I'm going to use my complement. We're going to start talking about complements. So I could take my red. One of the things I have them do is fill their water bowl. With kids, I make sure that they stick their finger in, and they can only fill it to the first knuckle. That way, when they're walking, it doesn't spill. If they fill it higher than that, you got water everywhere. So I try to teach the kids to get their supplies and do those things. A lot of elementary teachers don't because they're worried about the mess. So I prefer having my students get those things and learning to be self-sufficient. All right, now, first thing I'm going to do is take my brush. I like to spray mine with a little spray bottle and get water on there. I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to go to orange and I'm going to add water. And when I add water, I add it 20 times. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And you can see how much paint is on there. At no time did my metal ferrule touch that. And I'm going to just put this down. And when I pull a brush, I should always pull it towards the wood. And you can see just by how much I got a ton of paint on my brush. And I've still got paint over here that I can touch. Come over here. Every time I add paint to my brush, I want to add water. So I'm not going to go over here and grab that. I'm just going to grab a little water. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I have the kids count and I have them do it so that they understand that this is loading your brush with paint. And you want to make sure that you get a certain amount of, oh, see, I shouldn't have done that because I've crossed a line now. This should be that other color. Oh, made a mistake, but that's okay. I can put red there. Red will cover my orange. Yellow won't necessarily because yellow is a lighter intensity of color. So it won't necessarily cover. But you, as long as you do the background in blue here, you could have some orange bleed over if you want. So I'm going to go like that. I now have my orange. So I'm going to clean my brush by rubbing it in the water as much as I can. I'm going to take a paper towel. I'm going to use the paper towel to pull the water, and I always pull away from my bristles. Now my brush should be clean. Now I'm going to do blue, and I have a wide variety of blues here. And so I'm going to paint my background with my blue. So I'm going to go with this blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And you're going to see when you put blue next to orange that it works as a complement. Also, you're going to see that if you have it too wet, you're going to get some bleed. So you want to be careful of that. If you notice that it's starting to blend there, one of the things that we do in color is that when you mix complements, you lower or reduce the intensity of the color that you're mixing it with. So when you mix a complement with like blue and orange together, you get a really nasty kind of grayish brown. But that is what happens to orange or blue as it goes further into the distance. So it is a way of teaching people how. This is why we do the complements, because the complements they provide optimum contrast. As I like to tell kids, when you do complements, blue says to orange, boy, you look nice today. And orange says, why, thank you, blue. So it's just something to think about. It's very simple. It's the beginning of what we call color theory. It's the beginning of understanding why artists use certain colors that they do. And to understand that when you mix blue and orange together and you get those deep, less bright colors would be a way of saying it. So just to show you, so I'm going to take my blue, and I'm going to put a little blue on another sheet of paper. And I got another sheet of paper right here. I'm going to put my blue down like that. Now I'm going to clean this really well because I don't want it to mix too much right away. I'm going to take my orange, and then I'm just going to mix those two together. You can already see how the blue reduced in intensity. It's not as bright. The orange is not as bright. I probably have more orange than blue. It really changes the color. If I add a little bit of blue, you can see how it reduced that intensity right away. So this is the beginning of color theory. Now, this is a really cool experiment you could do with kids. It's really fun. Again, use your compliments on the Keith Haring. Watch the video about him. It's a really cool CBS documentary about the artwork that he did. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but fantastic artist.